Vacation Station, hosted by Lisa and Nancy, editors of BigBlendMagazines.com.
Hey, everybody. Welcome to Big Blend Radio. It's our Vacation Station travel show with Glynn Burrows. He talks with us every fourth Saturday, and that means we're very lucky. Glynn is a family history expert. He's a tour guide and owner of Norfolk Tours in England. He's been on our show for, I don't know, since I was a teenager, Glynn, right?
Yeah, about
that. Yeah, he's been on our show for, I would say, 15 years? I can't keep up.
It's heading that way.
Yeah. So that means I am a teenager now still, right? That's how it is. But Glynn has this amazing company, like I was saying, Norfolk Tours. But if you're going to England, what's really unique is going with someone who can show you the sites that you want to see. Yeah. The experiences, like if you're, looking back at your family's history, like a lot of us do, it's one of our top hobbies in the country is to trace our genealogy, our ancestry. And for many of us, it does lead back to England. He will help you with that and also take you to the places of your ancestors. So go to norfolk-tours.co.uk. See, that's a good plug, Glynn. Can I be hired as a promoter?
Yeah, I think I could good. Probably pay you 50p a week for that.
Oh, all right. Well, hey, gee, can I buy a Mr. Whippy with that? Or that's 99 cents?
Not anymore.
I have to wait 2 weeks. Oh, boy.
You're going to have to save up at least 2 months.
Well, today's show, we're talking, like I was saying, Glynn comes on every fourth Saturday, and we're talking about Norfolk Day. Norfolk Day happens on July 27th. So that's an English holiday celebrating Norfolk, but we should celebrate it here in the U.S. too, because we have Norfolk Beach. Do you have a Norfolk beach, Glynn?
We have so many beaches in Norfolk. There's just so many to choose from. We can have a sandy beach. We can have a shingle beach. We can have a pebble beach. We can have a very rocky beach. We can have a muddy beach. We can have just sort of a very, waterlogged beach. So we've got lots of beaches. Yeah, everything for everybody.
And some of them are seals. You have seals.
Oh, yeah, we have seals. Yeah,
we love it.
We have loads of wildlife. So if you're into bird watching or birding, as you call it in America, if you're into birding, then Norfolk is definitely one of the places to go because we're on the main migratory route from Europe to the north. So, yeah, we've got loads of wildlife.
Even kingfishers.
Oh, kingfishers. Not on the beach. Not on the beach.
No. But other countryside water. Yeah, they're freshwater.
Yeah.
So for Norfolk Day, you put together a list. I know we touched on this a few years ago, but it's just time to refresh a list of like the Norfolk 10. And of course, you had to go into food and you talked about different places. So like 10 must experiences if you go to Norfolk. But there is a nickname for you, I believe, for you Norfolkians. What is the nickname?
We're called Norfolk dumplings because Norfolk is sort of well known for making a very basic dumpling, which is just made with water, salt, and flour. And that's it. There's no fat in a Norfolk dumpling. And one of my favorite stories, I had a lady over from Australia once, and she was just talking to me about different things, as you do when we're driving around in the car. And I happened to mention to her that I'm a Norfolk dumpling because, that's what we are. And she said, well, why is that? And I said, Norfolk dumplings are made just with flour, water, and salt. And she looked at me and said, my granny used to make them in Australia. And it turned out that her grandmother, who had never actually lived in Norfolk, but her mother had come from Norfolk to London. Then this lady's grandmother then emigrated to Australia, but she still made Norfolk dumplings in Australia. So she had taken the recipe of the Norfolk dumpling to Australia. So that was amazing.
Wow. Cool. That's a small world, man. And that's something you experience with the family history is those small worlds that You know,
exactly.
we're all connected in the end.
Yeah, I mean, this lady just didn't know why her granny made these funny dumplings. But obviously, when we happened to have the conversation, she then realised that was because her granny's granny was from Norfolk,
Yeah.
and she
Yeah,
had
that's
inherited
cool.
the recipe.
Wow. Speaking of food, Norfolk dumplings, I've got to bring up the Mr. Whippy. So every time I talk about Mr. Whippies, people give me that one, raised eyebrow, like, I beg your pardon. What do you do on your off time, Lisa? That's not what I thought you did. But a Mr. Whippy, because you put on your top 10, number 4 only is ice
Yes.
cream. Ice cream's a
Yes.
big deal, but it's real ice cream, because we have some ice cream places that are famous here that are, I'm not going to knock them, but it's the same sentiment you have about going to a hotel that serves you factory sausage,
Yes.
and not
Yes.
the farm sausage, like,
Exactly.
from local ice
Yeah.
cream. We have a friend who was at an ice cream store. Someone put their ice cream in the trash, like, you know what I mean, outside, just didn't like it or something. And it was a blazing hot day, like it is here in America right now. And the ice cream didn't melt. So that's weird to me. Like, what are we
Very.
putting in our ice cream here? Is it fake? Like, what is in our food, right? So I don't think a Mr. Whippy has that problem, because, as I recall, if you don't lick up your Mr. Whippy with the flake chocolate and down the center of your ice cream cone, you've got a messy hand. But we like those.
Well, it's it melts down your hand.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, if I could share my pictures of my granddaughter the other week, we were at the seaside, and she had a Mr. Whippy, and her face was completely covered, and her arms was completely covered, because it just melts as quickly as you can possibly try and lick around it to get it. But the reason I put ice cream on the list is because we have got quite a lot of dairy farmers in the countryside who have had to diversify because of the very bad situation with supermarkets paying farmers next to nothing for milk. So what they've done is they've diversified, and they're selling milk at the farm, and they're also making yogurts and ice creams and things to go direct to the consumer. And some of these, ice creams are literally made of everything that they can get locally. So you get local flavors of ice cream, like your local hedgerow fruits and your different things like that. And that is what it's all about, trying to get a meal without any food miles on it. If you can have I had a group of American travel agents over once, and we did a meal for them, especially in the hotel that we were staying at. It was a very small farmhouse hotel run by the owners, and we did a meal for them that, like a 4-course meal. So there was a starter, main course, dessert, cheese and biscuits, and everything had less than 4 miles, I think, on it. I think the thing that had come the furthest was the ice cream, because it came from like 4 miles up the road. Everything else had come off the farm or from the local fields. And
that's awesome.
That is exactly
so cool.
Yeah, you want proper food with no food miles.
It's going to return to what it was like before we went all sophisticated and put all these preservatives and all that stuff that makes everybody get cancer, by the way, into our food for the sake of the people who were heads of the grocery stores.
Well, exactly. Why do we want to have strawberries at Christmas time in England? We never used to have strawberries at Christmas time.
No.
So why do we want strawberries now? We have strawberries in July when Wimbledon is on. We have strawberries.
We have them in California in February. But that's the thing about travel. When you travel somewhere, like if I go to Norfolk, I want, like, now some people will, can and preserve their strawberries, so you could have strawberry shortbread and things like that.
Yeah.
Which is great. And strawberry jam. Oh, Oh, I
Of course.
love a good strawberry jam, but that's the point of travel. You want to experience like authenticity, and you want a place with integrity. There's that word again.
Exactly.
So when
Food
you
in
go to,
season.
when you get the ice cream and it's from the farmer, to me, that means more than going to a chain store. And I'm not saying all chain stores are bad or anything. It just when I travel, like I want something that is unique to Norfolk. I want the mom and pop shop. I want the ice cream from the
Exactly.
farmer. I want to know the money that I work to earn is
Yep.
going to someone of the same value system.
yeah.
Like I want
Yeah.
my money
The person
So,
who really did
to
the
support.
work.
Yeah, I want to support the person. And we always talk this way, Glynn. I know it's kind of a little passionate thing between us all here, but it
Yeah.
is true. In travelers, if you honestly go to an airport store, go to a typical mall. There's all of those things we all know about. But travel is
whatever.
about trying something new and connecting and finding differences and commonalities. Now, ice
Exactly.
cream to me is something that majority of us like. Some are allergic, etc.
Mm.
But a lot of us love a good ice cream cone, and Mr. Whippy is fun too. But when you get it from a farm, it's like we had that in Central California in Tulare that one time. And Rosa Brothers. This is a dairy farm, and they did exactly what you're talking about,
So good.
Yep.
Glynn. And that's where a lot of farmers now are opening up, where you can stay on a farm to help
Exactly.
support
Yep.
their farm, because farming is not cheap and it's not easy because you're working with Mother Nature.
It's
So
hard work.
yeah, so there's ice cream, but you have a lot of seafood because you're on the beach.
Well, exactly. I mean, we're surrounded by water. Norfolk, I'd like to think that Norfolk is an island because you do have to cross water to come into Norfolk. But sadly, the definition of an island is more than just a river around you.
Oh,
But yeah, I
sure.
mean, we are surrounded by water, and a lot of the border of Norfolk is actually the sea. So we have lots of beautiful seafood like chroma crabs, which are very, very famous because they are fantastic. These lovely red crabs. We have lots of beautiful mussels up near Brancaster. We've got some fantastic mussels. And samphire, which is a seaweed. And that is absolutely gorgeous. It's called the poor man's asparagus because it's a very fine flavor. And, we love samphire in our family. I love samphire with a bit of salt and vinegar in a piece of brown bread. That's the best way to eat samphire. But you can eat it warm with butter, like you have with asparagus. So as you're surrounded by the sea and you've got all this fresh seafood, you're getting what is local. You're getting a taste of what is actually growing and being caught where you are.
So it's really fresh, and there's such a big difference between fresh, and I've been on a truck for 3,000 miles, refrigerated truck, and then I've been taken out of the refrigerated truck in the heat, put on a dolly with a lot of other boxes, hauled into a supermarket. Oh, now we went from cold to heat, cold.
Yeah.
Think about it, 1,500 to 2,000 miles, your food is transferred here to there to there. And by the time you get it, and they call it fresh, it's at least 3 days old.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I was listening to a program the other day, and they were showing you egg farmers. And although they were free range eggs, so the chickens, were able to walk around. They had a hut that they lived in, but they were free range. And they were saying that they get the eggs and they pack them. And then within 3 days, they're in the supermarket. Well, they're already 3 days old before they even get on the ship.
Exactly.
Whereas if you buy them from the farm gate, you've got brand new eggs, literally just been laid. Sometimes you've still got the chicken dirt and the feathers attached to them. Well, you don't eat the shells, so what's the problem?
Exactly. we used to have chickens, and the best layer was, first of all, I thought she had a comb and she crowed, and then she laid eggs. So I was like, oh, okay, I don't know what you are, but she laid a ton of eggs, and her eggs were the best. But
Yeah.
her shell was really thick compared to the other chickens.
Yeah.
And so one day, like, first she was Patrick, then she was Penny, then she was. It's funny. Depending on when she crowed, I was like, okay, I'm confused, but her eggs were good. You could go get them when they're still warm. After she laid them, put them on the counter and eat them that day.
Yeah.
Nothing like it.
Yeah, exactly.
Nothing like it.
You know, this is the thing, is about having that connection. And one of the things that you listed historic sites in your article, Glynn, and everyone, Glynn's got this article up on blendradioandtv.com, and it is all linked from the show notes, so you'll see it there. No matter if you're listening on Spotify or YouTube or Google or Apple, wherever, it's in there. And so thanks for listening too. But you have a lot of these historic sites like Castle Acre, Gresson Hall, Rural Life Museum. So I want to kind of go to Gresson Hall first, because I kind of feel like if you're eating local food, right, that, you know, things that coming from the ocean or, you know, that kind of thing, and from the farm, that if you go to a place like Gresson Hall, you're going to understand kind of the roots of the food that you're eating locally.
Yeah. I mean, they actually use horses on the farm, and you know, you can actually see the horses pulling the plows and the harrows and doing the haymaking and things like that. They have pigs, so you can see the pigs. They have the cattle, they have the chickens, they have the turkeys. You know, they have all the animals and the goats and the, you know, so it's all about, especially for children who grow up in a town and they don't realize that, you know, milk come from a cow or udder, you know, to actually be able to do that. They've actually got some pretend cows that they can milk, you know, and they see the cows so they can understand about that. You know, they've got the horses, they've got the pigs, so they can see that pigs live in a pigsty. And then, you know, they turn into sausages and bacon, and, you know, and goats give milk as well. And, you know, so it's all about learning about where your food comes from and how difficult it is. Because when you're seeing the horses working on the farm, you know, you can see that to plow the field, you've got to use this horse with this great big machine, this plow, you know, and a man has to walk behind it. So, you know, 150, well, not even 150. My dad started working with horses, you know, so they were still using horses in Norfolk in the 1950s, you know, so it's good for children to actually see what it's all about and to realize that, you know, carrots grow in a field. You know, you have to dig potatoes up. They don't come in a plastic bag. You have to dig them out of the ground, you know. Cauliflowers are surrounded by lots of green leaves. They're not all, you can't see the cauliflower in the cauliflower when it's in the field, because it's all surrounded by green leaves, you know. So it's them sort of things that children, especially from towns and cities, need to see this, because they don't see it like I grew up with it. They need to understand that the reason potatoes need to be peeled is because they come out of the ground, you know.
Yeah.
Because they're covered in soil.
It's really about teaching appreciation for what goes into everything that is grown or that is made.
Exactly.
Otherwise, if you think you can just walk into a supermarket, buy something, then there is hardly any value if you don't understand where it came from, how hard it was for somebody somewhere to make it.
Exactly.
You know, there's no appreciation. If there's no appreciation, then people kind of go a little bit,
then you don't understand the value. Yeah, you don't understand the value for your pound. You know, I remember when we lived in England, and this, even as a child, I mean, even in South Africa and Kenya, it was the same thing. When you got green beans, whether you harvested them from your garden yourself or got them from the supermarket, or the potatoes, you would sit on the doorstep or at the kitchen table, and it was kind of a gathering time where you peeled the potatoes, you snapped the peas. You know what I mean? Where you did the green beans.
Exactly.
And as a kid, now we're attached to the phone instead.
That is another thing that they do at Gresson Hall, is they do involve the children in doing things.
Nice.
There's a pump just outside the back door of a cottage on the museum. An old-fashioned. I'm using my arm, so I'm showing you what you do. It's an old-fashioned pump that they used to have in the backyard, that you pumped water up from the well, and they get the children to pump the water. So they realised that years ago they didn't have a tap, and they didn't have water that you just got because the tap turned on. You had to pump it out of the ground. And even for my little granddaughter who's 4.5, for her to hang on the pump and realise how much hard work it is to pump water, to fill the bucket up, to be able to go and do something with that is the way that children learn how things actually are. It's not easy just to turn the tap on. Somebody has to create all of this. Somebody had to invent the fact that water comes out of a tap through gravity feed, So the pump was a way that they used to do it years ago that brought the water up from under the ground. Without that, a lot of children don't actually realize that water comes from under the ground, or from the river or whatever,
Exactly. Like
learning.
One place Lisa and I lived in where there was a water, I don't know, I guess you call it a tank. And we had to go get the water out of the tank. And we had to climb up the ladder, and I had to hold Lisa by her legs and give her a bucket. And she could go get the bucket of water, and then I pull her up.
That was in South Africa. We lived on an orange farm. They did oranges.
Thank you. Yeah.
Cabbage. It was cramming. We lived in this farmhouse.
Yeah.
We were renting property from them, and there was it was really cool. And that's where we did a lot of horse. They had horses, and that's where I got thrown by that little Shetland pony. And now you know what I have names for Shetland ponies. This.
Yeah, she gets mad every time she sees
every time I see a Shetland pony, I have a different name.
Well, they're little Spitfires.
But they had oranges, cabbage, and strawberries were the main crops on this farm. It was beautiful. Yeah. But it was like and sugarcane. We used to go get sugarcane, and you'd harvest, and you would, like, all the kids work. Everybody that was one of the best experiences. And what you're talking about, Glynn, about kids having to do things, if you don't, when you're educating kids, if you're expecting them to sit in their chair for hours, it's not going to happen. Not even minutes, right? They're going to wiggle around, and they're not going to take things in unless they have the experience. And a lot of adults too. And, you want to have hands-on. I mean, I'm like that. You want to get involved. But I love that with history. You go from Gresson Hall to places like Sandringham and Blickling Hall, like all these. You go, here's a rural farm, and then, we're going to go there. And Castle Acre. Oh, let's go back to Castle Acre. That, I want to go there. This is
beautiful.
I want to go there.
Yeah, Castle Acre is one of the best examples of a medieval village that you're ever going to find, because it's got a priory. If only you could see, my backdrop today is actually Castle Acre Priory. So it's a Norman priory that was got rid of by Henry VIII. But there's also a Norman castle in the same village. And there's a Norman Bailey gate, so you can walk through the outer Bailey gate into the castle grounds. And all the earthworks are all still there. And, then you've also got a really old 17th century village pub sitting on the village green. You've got a medieval church that you can visit. You've got lots of medieval houses. It's absolutely perfect. And, it's them sort of things that you can then understand the scale of the buildings, the scale of the work that went into building them, and just what life used to be like. And again, for children, they understand more if they can actually be there, or if they can actually feel it or experience it. I mean, talking about the museum, I remember that when my daughter was at primary school, I used to go into the primary school because I was the chair of governors at the time. And I used to go in and take in lots of historic items to talk to the children about. So we would show them things, so rather than just talk about an old wind-up gramophone, for instance, I would take a wind-up gramophone with the old records and play that for the children.
It's a jolly good wind-up. Sorry.
Oh, great, yeah. And I remember that I met one of the boys who used to go to school with my daughter when they were about 7. I met him at university because he went to the same university as my daughter did. And one of the first things he said to me was, "Oh, Mr. Burrows, I remember when you came into the school and showed us that wind-up gramophone. That was amazing." And this was like
That's cool.
10, 15 years later. So children remember stuff when they experience it. And that is what it's all about.
And
That's
I want to ask
learning.
you this because I know everyone's going to go, well, you should know this by now, but I have to. You keep referring to the Norman Priory, the Norman this.
Yeah.
I mean, then there's Norman. Ooh, what Nancy?
No.
What's
Stop
with the
it.
Norm? Who is Norman?
The Normans came from France. And if ever you've heard about 1066 and the Battle of Hastings, that is when the Normans came over and conquered England. That's the last time that England was ever invaded by the Normans in 1066. And they came over and took over the country, basically. And they're the ones who did all this amazing building of castles and priories and abbeys, and it's just amazing. The Normans
so that's why
architecture.
So okay, so I have to go back on this because the Norman to me does not sound French. Okay, so that's why I've probably never quite got it. But
you never heard of Normandy?
I have heard of Normandy, Normans. I get it. But I know, I'm sorry. Listen, I'm blonde. Okay. I can't help it. But anyway, no, but I'm just kidding. No, but hey, I know there's other people like me out there in the world who just, you've got to put things together.
Of course.
So we just did a podcast with Mike Guardia and you've been on shows with him, military historian, on the Revolutionary War and what led to it in this country.
Yeah.
And it was interesting because you'd just done, the famous 5 of the Declaration of Independence, their history.
Yes.
And so we were looking at, because I didn't grow up here. So I'm really I'm at the beginning of the podcast, I'm like, Mike, I haven't a clue of my own country stuff. I know I did, but what really went down? And he said it was all about the French. It was like the French-English wars and then the English one eventually. And when the English won, then they started wanting to tax us Americans who helped England, even though we moved away. So are we talking about the same war, or am I messing up my wars?
No, you're thinking about the 18th century. So you're talking about the 1700s. And,
you're talking medieval times, duh. Yeah.
And I'm talking about 1066.
Okay, but this is okay. I'm allowed to ask stupid questions.
No, it's not. There's no such thing as a stupid question.
See?
No such thing as a stupid question because, we don't know. I don't know everything, so
it's hard to put the timeline of the world. You can't put the the whole timeline of the world. I'm not a history major Mike, and I don't do what you do. But the reality is Nancy and I learned so much doing these podcasts and then traveling.
Yes.
It's like we're in constant college and I love it. But then it's like you get so if you go down a rabbit hole, you're in a hole. You're not seeing the grand scheme always when you go down that little tunnel. And then I'm like, oh, wait a minute, does this connect with this? And then that's another rabbit hole, right? But that's my thing, is always trying to put things into context of what happened, where, and when. It's hard to do it around the world.
There was so much going on in the 18th and the early 19th century. There was so much going on with revolutions. You know, you had the French Revolution, you had the American Revolution, obviously, and then sort of 1800 to sort of like 1815 up to the Battle of Waterloo. You know, then
that's right.
You know, you had all of this stuff going on in the world, and there's never really been a time when people haven't been fighting each other for some reason or another, or for no reason at all. You know, and you keep thinking, oh, that's going to be the end of it, but it never is. I mean, they said the First World War was going to be the end to
the end of all.
And it never did. You know,
and look at today. Now we're all sitting there looking at Russia and Ukraine and what's going on with all of that. Going,
you have to remember that we are still animals, and we're territorial.
You've also got to remember. You've got to remember, like we were talking about before we came on air, is that there are always idiots who want to take over the world, and
I know they're lazy.
Never stopped. There's always people who want to be bigger and better than everybody else.
Yeah, but they don't want to put the work in and do it in a right way, an honorable way that says they deserve it. They want to take, pillage, and plunder from everyone else. And they're lazy.
It's been happening since the first man stood on the world.
Yep.
See what happens when I ask one thing? See, who's Norman?
But it's true. So you have to ask. You have to ask yourself when you look in the mirror, who are you? Are you one of the lazy ones?
Are you Norman? Well,
or are you willing to work and build character?
Yeah. But I go back to Norman now, right? Because Norman is like a contemporary name. So it sounds like a contemporary name, right?
Yes. And, I mean, Norman you will not see a child today called Norman, but Norman was, I mean, one of the best comedians in England was Norman Wisdom. I mean, he was amazing, but you know, that is a very, I don't know, 1910, 1920 name. You know,
well, here now we had the TV show Cheers, and you had Norm, and everybody walked Norm.
But they won't say Norman.
Norman, Norman is kind of almost like you're a geek, like it's a nerd name, and I like nerds and geeks, but it's kind of like you know, but it's so interesting to have the name Norman during medieval times. And I remember as a kid in England learning about medieval, and so you'd think I'd remember all that, but I don't. Everything, but I do remember my big thing about the medieval times was how there was no sanitation. As a kid, that got me, was sanitation.
Always toilets.
I know. Listen. Always. You talk about, isn't it Louis and his golden throne, and he had someone do.
Yeah, I mean, not being funny, but actually to encourage children to learn about history, there's probably no better way. I mean, when you go and have a look at the Romans, you go to the Romans and you see their toilets, and then you go to the medieval monasteries and you see their toilets. And I mean, Karlslager has got a fantastic building that was the toilet block, and you know, it is there. It is
okay.
There.
Tell everybody the toilet with the dude. Was it Louis that had the toilet guy with the toilet stick? Who has the stick?
The stick was the Romans. They had like a stick with like a sponge on the end of it that they washed in a little stream of water that went out in front of the toilets, and you used to use the stick with the sponge.
This is what I remember every time we talk to Glynn. Tell me about the stick in the toilets. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
No, but I mean, we have toilet brushes today. It's the same thing.
No. You don't use a toilet brush for the same purpose as you use.
No, you don't. That could hurt. No, there's a difference between a brush and a sponge. Okay.
Yes.
The big difference. But the one king had a dude that would do it for him, right?
Oh,
He would
yes,
sponge
yes,
the
yeah,
butt.
of course, yeah.
the butt ski.
The medieval kings used to have a garderobe, which is, the man used to look after the toilet for him.
Oh my gosh. See, we always go down
my
the toilet on
gosh.
the show. Anyway, all right, let's go
Oh,
from the toilet in the medieval. But it was always the sanitation. There was also like, they didn't
at least they tried.
understand
Yes.
sanitation needs at
Yeah.
the beginning of
Yeah.
civilization, right?
Yeah.
So we're going to go from toilets to broads.
Yes.
Right. Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The Norfolk Broads, and they really were this burlesque show that happened every
No, I'm
Saturday.
afraid
I'm
not.
kidding.
Pan dancers.
The vaudeville show. What? No. Tell everybody about the Norfolk Broads, because this is, Glynn, this is something when we come over, this is what I want to do personally.
Yeah.
And this
You
is
have to
on my
down
list.
the Broads.
The
I
Norfolk
want to-
Broads really are a fantastic area. And we're going back to medieval again, because in medieval times, especially in places like Norfolk, where we didn't have coal mines and, things like that, and we didn't have, although we had a lot of trees, we didn't have as many as they had sort of in the hilly areas, because we had a lot of farmland. So to actually use to burn fuel, we used peat. And to get peat, you had to dig it out of the ground. So they used to dig peat out of the ground. And these big peat holes, for want of a better word, became flooded. And they are now known as the Norfolk Broads. So they are peat diggings that were flooded. And they're now some fantastic water features in the countryside. They are fantastic nature reserves. You can go boating and fishing. The birds are amazing. This is where you'll see kingfishers. I've seen kingfishers on the Broads, and it is just such a beautiful area. You can go sailing. You can hire one of these electric boats and go out. We always go out every year with the family and take a boat out on the Broads just to have a day messing around on the water, and it's just so peaceful and just so lovely, just to
and then get ice cream afterwards.
Well, funnily enough, there is a little boat that goes around the Broads that sells Mr. Whippies. So
No.
you can
No
actually
way.
On a
buy
boat, like you have the ice
cool.
cream man in a little. You have a ice cream boat.
ice cream.
That's
boat.
cool.
The
What
ice
a good
cream
idea.
boat. Yeah, you look it
Oh my
up.
gosh.
You look up ice creams on the Broads, and I would think you'll probably get a picture of the man in the little boat selling ice cream on the
How
Broads
cool.
from a
What
boat.
a good idea.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I had no idea. I did not know.
That's
Does he have a
cool.
little bell? Does he ring a bell?
No, he doesn't. He doesn't have the music, I'm afraid.
Oh, well, because it would be
that'd be
disturbing
funny,
the
though.
peace. See, I see
Yeah,
Hyacinth
it would.
Bouquet keeping up appearance on her boat.
On the Broads.
On the
Yeah.
Broads,
this
good.
ice cream
I would
cone.
like to have a really, a slimline ice cream cone.
I can just see it.
Yeah.
Richard.
Yeah, Richard, mind the little man in the
have an
boat.
ice cream cone.
Oh
I
boy,
love
here we go.
Hyacinth.
All
I
right,
love
all right.
Hyacinth
I'm
Bouquet.
moving on
She's the
to
best.
sandering him, because that is something, Hyacinth Bouquet, would go
I
to
love
sandering him.
her.
Definitely.
And she's going to go to see the Queen. Yeah, it's past. And so
Oh,
sandering.
great to see the
So
Queen.
yeah, what is it like now that you have King Charles III? So that's
Yeah,
going to
what's
be a
up
little
there?
shift. Is it does it feel different? I mean, obviously
Yes.
it's different
Does
without the
it?
Queen.
Yeah. He's already made several changes. The front of the house, where there has always, since the Second World War, there's always been a massive lawn, because before the Second World War there were formal gardens at the front of the house, but during the Second World War they ploughed up the gardens for the dig for victory. So they planted the fields. They ploughed up the front gardens, because the king had to be seen to be the same as the people, so he ploughed up his front garden. So after the war, it's just put back to lawn. It was never put back to gardens. And now the king has reinstated a garden. So that looks quite different. It hasn't been, well, obviously it hasn't had time to establish,
to grow,
but it's looking quite different. And I have got some pictures of it, but for some unknown reason, I can't attach my camera to my computer at the moment. But I will post some pictures when I get a chance.
Yeah, send them to us, and we'll put them with the article. That would be great.
That's interesting that he's doing that. I mean,
yes,
for a long time, King Charles was in the background a lot.
Yes,
for any, you kind of never really got to see who he was or his personality. So when he became king, we're all over here kind of like, oh boy.
Yeah,
well,
that's because
he's always been very interested in gardens and in preserving proper gardens for wildlife and for the gardens themselves. So I'm not at all surprised that he is letting a lot of the grounds grow.
That's cool.
More hay, so he's getting more for insects, but he's also he's also replacing the formal garden. Cool. But a lot of that is just is for wildlife, insects, and things as well.
So he's putting the pollinator gardens in. That's something.
It all back. He's putting it all back.
Well, I know that him and his sons, both of them, have been huge on wildlife conservation, and so I stand by them with that big time. And it's a huge deal. And in this country, I mean, we're learning, what the devastate. Anyway, certain things that went out into farming, chemicals and stuff, were not a good thing. Yes. And so we have to reinstate all these places, like you're saying, and putting the natural and native plants back that are good for bees and good for, beneficial insects. And we're seeing a lot of this, the Midwest, which is all farming, Glynn, it's known for cornfields and everything out here. Well, we're seeing them really go to task on getting their prairies back and having their native grasses back and really fix whatever happened. And there's a lot of, even the Dust Bowl taught America stuff, right? About how to rotate crops. And I think England, being such a small country, has really had to learn things quickly. You can't, because you're a small country and you're an island. I look at you as an island, even with Scotland and Wales, it's like you're a big island. But and so you don't have room to screw up, really. You really don't, for the health of your country. And England, Scotland and Wales as well. And also the neighboring islands, like the Channel Islands, Isle of Man, Isle of Wight, like you have to, it's all connected. But I think Europe's always been better. England and Europe has always been better about farming. This country is really big and commercialized too much, too fast. But we're making strides. As much as I love to go on rants about corporations and all that, and going on like, oh, we're all doomed. At the same time, I have to say, on a real positive front, there are these, like what King Charles is doing, these gardens going in, even at rest areas where you stop, you're driving across the country, stop, go take a bathroom break, take a walk, that kind of thing, rest a little bit before you keep driving. They're putting in pollinator gardens, and the Midwest does it really well. Iowa, Kansas, Missouri, Minnesota. They even have the one highway that goes along the Jefferson Highway from Winnipeg down to New Orleans. There's one part of it, Highway 35, or it's interstate. So it's bigger than the actual Jefferson Highway. It's kind of aligned. It's like runs along it. That is known as the Monarch Highway because it's about putting things back for the monarch butterflies. And so it's so cool to hear this about England, because I think it's an international thing that we have to do. It's not just one country. Yes. It's all of us, because we all messed up somewhere there, at one point.
And something that we've had in England this year has been called No Mow May, where they encouraged people not to mow their lawns until the end of May. So it gave the bees and the insects time to actually work with the plants. So there's still quite a lot of areas of England where they would normally be sort of like manicured lawns, especially public spaces. I mean, for instance, in the village here, there is an area of grass in front of some not retirement homes, but little houses for single people, and a lot of that has been left to just grow. And there's just the odd path that's been mown through it, so people can walk across the grass. The rest of it has all been left to grow like 2 foot high. So you've still got some of the grass that's still 2 foot high, and then you've got little paths through it that has been mowed. So I mean, that's really good. It looks good.
That's a good compromise. Yeah,
it
is
a
compromise. Yeah,
that's
it's a thought out reaction
Yeah.
to something happening and realizing, whoopsie, if we keep cutting the lawns, first of all, it's pretty boring to look at, and everybody looks the same. Put a garden in. Come on, dude.
And it provides the seed, and they even say here during the fall or autumn in England, you don't rake up all your leaves because that's food for some bugs that are beneficial, even like fireflies, lightning bugs, you may call them. It's really, it's also good mulch for your garden. And the more we commercialize everything, and I use the word commercialize because we do it to our own properties. We want to over clean. It's like we're sanitizing everything to the point of you wonder why, we have so much illness too. The more we sanitize things, we're like bleaching everything in our garden. So our soil isn't good. We're taking away what nature does, thinking we know better than her. And we really don't. We're learning. And if we can learn and amend and fix our wrongs, I think that's a huge step. And that's something we never really talk about in tourism. No, it's coming there, because I have to say it's true. Tourism is about not just having a vacation. It's about learning things. I mean, tourism comes in so many forms. We've done, talked about leisure travel, Glynn, student travel, youth travel, all of those things. But it's also about learning something you can take home and go, wow, I learned something. I went to this garden in England and I saw what they were doing. I'm like, oh, I can do this where I live in Australia or England or wherever. Exactly. I can do this to make a better change. And when you go to parks and gardens, which Nancy and I pretty much live in, we see all these changes that can be made. The gardens aren't there just to have a nice outing. They're all demonstration gardens. Even if it's a negative, it's a demonstration of what can be done or not be done.
And a lot of these things are so transferable because, I mean, whenever we go to different places, I mean, Diane's the gardener in our family. I don't garden. But Diane will often get an idea. And obviously, she's not going to do these great big things that they do in gardens like at Sandringham, but that gives her an idea of what she can do in our garden. You know? So these things are all transferable skills. And I always remember one of my early visitors. We went to Sandringham, funnily enough, and we went to the church. And outside the churchyard, or at the churchyard at the gate, there is a lich gate. Now, a lich gate is a gate with a cover over it. It's got a little. It's like a little building, and it's got a roof over it. It's where they used to stand with the coffin before they went into the churchyard. So it was under a roof. And this lady, she absolutely loved this lich gate, and she took dozens of pictures of it because she wanted her son to make her a version of it when she got home to America. So an idea from Sandringham could be used in. This was in Alabama, so there could well be a lich gate in Alabama that is modelled on the one at Sandringham Church. Because the idea was taken, and that's what it's all about. It's about learning.
It is. I mean, travel to me, it's fun, but the learning is actually the reason to travel.
Yeah, because if you don't learn anything, you don't remember. Like it goes back to that kid. You know, that you're talking about, the wind up. It's the wind up kid. That's the thing. Yeah, everybody loves a good wind up. But that's the thing. So in closing, because I know we've been gabbing for a while here because it's fun. It's Norfolk, Blickling Hall. So this is another stately, as you're saying, stately home in Norfolk. And now any chance Glynn can talk about Anne Boleyn? He's doing it.
Oh, you've got to talk about Anne Boleyn.
Yeah, cool.
I feel so sorry for Anne Boleyn.
Yeah.
Why you have your head cut off just because you couldn't have a son? It's just so ridiculous.
Now that's ridiculous.
Like America.
And how do they know it was her fault?
Well, yes,
they chopped off the wrong person's head.
Yeah, exactly. They should have cut something else. No, I didn't say that. But the thing about Anne Boleyn is that they do believe she was born in Blickling. Nobody knows for certain because they just don't know where she was born. But this is where her family were living, so they think that's where she was born, in an earlier house on the site, because the present house was built in the 1620s. But that is definitely where her family lived. But Blickling Hall itself is just such a beautiful house. It's got everything going for it. It's a gorgeous house, a fantastic setting. Again, it's got lovely gardens. It's got a beautiful walled garden, which they're now trying to take back to how it was. So the volunteers in the garden are now trying to redo it to how it used to be, because all of these stately homes had their own walled garden because everything was grown on site for the house. So they didn't have food miles, they had food yards. You only had to get it from the garden and it was taken to the kitchen. That's exactly what it's all about.
That's fresh.
This is what you see, and they're now trying to recreate that, and that's looking good. Really.
So
lovely.
Does she really walk through the halls with her head in her?
Who knows? Who knows?
Okay, but this, you say in your article, is a beautiful example of a Jacobean stately home.
Jacobean.
All right. Oh, well,
Jacobean.
Here we go. I can't pronounce anything anywhere.
That's so funny. Well, you did it the South African way.
No, I just did it the Lisa way, probably. Well, I thought I was saying it quite proper, actually.
It's all to do with King James. That's why it's called Jacobean, because it's King James.
Oh.
King James the Jacobean?
Yeah, the Jacobean era. It's like the Elizabethan era.
Okay.
It's named after Elizabeth. The Jacobean era is named after James. And the Carolinian era is named after the first two King Charleses. So at the moment, we're in a Carolinian period.
Now, does that connect to South and North Carolina of America?
Yes, I would think so. Although it could be
named after
Caroline. It's probably Queen Caroline.
Oh, we're going to have to look that up now, because
we'll have to look it up.
Oh, we're going to have to look. Oh, and I have another thing on that too, because
I believe Queen Caroline was George III's wife, but I may be caught out on that.
Well, it's Carolina. I'm gonna research that. Here we go, another rabbit hole. But while we talk about Jacobeans and we talk about all these names, Norman, we're gonna bring up Nelson, Lord Nelson. But before we do that, who is Burnham? Who started with the Burnham name? Because I didn't know there were 7 Burnham villages. You've been on the show for over 10 years, 15 years. And I know you talk about different places, but I didn't realize that there were 7 villages in Norfolk with the name Burnham. Burnham.
Burn is just another word for a river. So it's a town or a village near a river. So that's why you've got 7 different villages that are, the names actually relate to the churches or the gates or where they are. So for instance, you got Burnham Norton, which is the Burnham North town. You got Burnham Deepdale, which is the village in the dale. So that's, you've got Burnham Thorpe. A thorpe is a secondary settlement. You got Burnham Westgate, so it's on the west side of the settlement. Burnham Sutton, which is the south town, Sutton. Ulf, which is a name of a church. And then you got Burnham Overy, which is to do with it being a seaside port. So, you know,
not a lady's ovary, just making sure, because it's audio. Well, no, because they're not reading it. It's ovary is spelt different, but it sounds the same. So, like, if I heard this, you know, without talking to you and reading it, I'd go, what? No, there's a town named after an ovary. Different.
Yeah.
No, I'm not trying to be weird. Okay, and the Thorpe. Now, there's a lot of people with the last name Thorpe. That's a decent name.
Thorpe just means a secondary settlement. So if you very often have, I don't know, we'll call a place, I don't know, Norwich. Well, funnily enough, there is one. Just outside Norwich, there is a place called Thorpe, because it is just a smaller settlement beside the main settlement. So
it's
you
like
have
a mini Norwich.
A mini Burnham. So Burnham Thorpe was just another Burnham close by, and Burnham Thorpe is where Nelson was born. That's where Nelson's dad was the vicar.
Huh. Wow.
Nelson's column.
Nelson's column. And
where's Nelson's column? It's in London, right?
In Leicester Square.
That's right.
Middle of London. He was at the Battle of Trafalgar. He was a very well-known sailor.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Glynn, this has been one heck of a conversation. I love these. And thank you for answering my stupid questions, which are not stupid, because listen, it's just trying to put things in context, because you cannot know every detail of the history of the world, right? And history is connected with other places and where you are. Just that's the beauty of travel, is to connect cultures and to connect history. I love these 10. I think we went over 10, but because we're good at that. And you know, always fun. Glenn's story is up on blendradioandtv.com. And as I was saying, all the links will be in the show notes. Also, we'll have a list of previous articles that Glynn has written and podcasts about Norfolk. You can see those also on his article page, but also go to norfolk-tours.co.uk and keep up with Glynn, especially if you're going to England, if you're planning a trip, have questions, doing your family history, just, you know, drop Glynn an email. He's a wonderful bloke. Am I allowed to say that? He's a good Norfolk dumpling. He's a nice dumpling.
I'm a good old boy.
He is
a good old boy.
Yeah, but you don't want to say that in this country.
No.
That means that you haven't progressed.
No, the good old boys in this country tend to be politicians.
We don't want that. No, that's it. That's like I said, they haven't progressed. So, oopsie, I'm not supposed to say that. Sorry. Everyone also keep up with us at bigblendradio.com. We're here with Glynn every fourth Saturday. It's always a joy. Thank you so much, Glynn.
Well, thanks for having me on board. Look forward to the next time.
Cool.